In the previous video I talked about where the Stern gun came from and who designed it. In this video I wanted to briefly touch on its operation, how it was constructed and how many versions there are. In total around 4.5 million were produced, making it the second most constructed submachine gun behind the Russian PPSH-41 or Papasha. In total there were 4 main marks with various submodels thrown in. The Mk1 produced at the Singer Sewing Machine Company with around 100,000 produced before it was realised it could be vastly simplified and cease production in favour of the Mk2. The Mk1 Star. This was more of an interim model. It was a Mk1 with some of the features removed like the wooden furniture, the flash hider and foregrip and so on. The Mk2, this as I mentioned before, was the most common variant. Its manufacturing time was reduced to only 5.5 hours per gun and cost only around $11. It was manufactured by several different contractors and there was even a version known as a Canadian. This was produced at the Long Branch factory alongside the Long Branch Enfield rifle. Its idea was to not only be cheap but compact for use with paratroopers. The magazine housing would rotate so it could be stored flat. It's important to note that the magazine could not be fitted nor the firearm operated in this position. The barrel assembly and buttstock were removable, making an already compact firearm even more so. There were 2 suppressed variants of this mark, known as the Mk2S and the Mk2 SOE. The Special Operations Executive version was carried out by them in-house using a Well silencer that was produced by Polish firearms experts. It was an otherwise standard gun. The Mk2S had a lightened bolt and mainspring, and so it could use non-specialist ammunition. Its barrel was ported to reduce its velocity to subsonic levels, hence the lightened components to still function with a lower power output. The Mk3, this was by far the worst version of the Sten, designed and produced by Lines Brothers, a toy manufacturer. The barrel was no longer removable, nor did the magazine housing rotate. Its construction was almost entirely stamped, to which the components were pinned and or welded. Nearly 900,000 were produced before they were told to cease. The Mk5. By February 1944, when its production started, Britain could now focus on quality over quantity. Its construction time was twice that of the Mk2. It had wooden furniture once again and even a decent pistol grip. Earlier models even had a foregrip like the Mk1, but this was deleted in June 1945 when it was discovered it weakened the barrel retaining catch. By far one of its best additions was to the front sight. It had the front sight of an Enfield rifle, fitted in place of the crude front wedge on previous models. Just over 500,000 were produced at 2 factories. So how did the Sten gun work? It was supplied by a 32-round horizontally mounted box magazine. This was a double stack, single feed magazine, which was prone to jamming. If we compare this with a Thompson magazine, it was a double stack that fed from both the left and right stacks, creating less of a bottleneck. It was a select fire weapon with a push button selector, marked A for automatic and R for repetition, semi-automatic. There was one exception to this. The suppressed models were sometimes limited to semi-auto due to heat buildup. It was a blowback operated open bolt firing machine carbine. This means that there was no gas system as seen on many firearms. The inertia of the round being fired would project the bolt rearwards. The open bolt had a fixed firing pin, so no hammer was needed. When the trigger was pulled, the bolt would travel forwards, strip around from the magazine, chamber it and fire it. This was the cheapest and least accurate design. And realistically you would see its accurate range be less than 100 meters. See you in part 3.